Heart rate is erratic, BP is dropping.
He's going into VFib. Get me a central line kit, now.
Vitals are critical, Doctor.
The automatic doors slammed open. Boots hit the hospital floor hard. 3 men in desert combat gear moved down the corridor with the controlled aggression of soldiers who were used to being obeyed. Dust still clung to their uniforms. One of them pushed past a shocked orderly without slowing down. "Where is she?" the tallest one demanded. The nurse at the station froze. "Sir, this is a restricted room number." His voice cut through the hallway like steel. Silence. A monitor beeped somewhere down the corridor. Then a young nurse stepped forward. Fresh badge. Fresh scrubs. Clearly new. "Sir," she said carefully, "you can't storm through the ICU like this." The man turned. Massive shoulders. Hard eyes. AUS, Navy SEAL trident pinned to his chest. The hallway suddenly felt smaller. His jaw tightened. "Stay out of this," he growled. The words weren't loud, but they carried the weight of command. The rookie nurse didn't move. Behind him, one of the other operators shifted slightly, scanning the hallway like he expected trouble. A doctor stopped walking halfway down the corridor, sensing the tension. The SEAL stepped closer. Now he towered over her. "You don't understand the situation," he said. "So step aside." The nurse held her ground. Her fingers tightened around the clipboard in her hands. "This is a hospital," she replied quietly. "Not a combat zone." A few people nearby exchanged nervous looks. The SEAL's patience snapped. His voice dropped even lower. "Listen carefully," he said, leaning closer. "We're not asking." He gestured toward the ICU wing. "We're going in that room." The nurse shook her head. "No, you're not." The hallway went silent. For a moment, no one breathed. The SEAL stared at her like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Then his expression hardened. "You have no idea who you're blocking," he said coldly. The rookie nurse finally met his eyes and spoke a single word. One word that made the second SEAL behind him suddenly straighten. "SAS." The hallway stayed silent after the word left her mouth. SAS. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it landed differently. The second operator behind the tall SEAL shifted his stance immediately. His eyes flicked to the rookie nurse again, this time with sharper attention. The tall SEAL didn't move. For a long second, he just stared at her. Then he let out a short breath through his nose. "You've got guts," he said flatly. "But name-dropping a foreign unit isn't going to scare anyone here." The nurse didn't react. Her badge read N. Carter. The plastic clip trembled slightly from the tension in her grip. Around them, the ICU corridor had slowed to a cautious standstill. Doctors pretended to check charts. Orderlies lingered longer than necessary. Everyone could feel it, the invisible weight that followed military personnel into places like this. Hospitals near major bases learned that quickly. This one sat just outside a massive naval installation on the East Coast. Helicopters arrived here more often than ambulances. Combat casualties, training accidents, classified transfers, most of the staff had seen enough to know when something serious was unfolding. And when Navy SEALs walked in wearing combat gear, people usually stepped aside. The tall operator clearly expected the same. He tapped a gloved finger against the desk. "Room number," he repeated. The charge nurse behind the station swallowed, but didn't answer. The rookie spoke again instead. "The patient in that room is under restricted care," she said. "Medical command authorized it." One of the operators behind the leader chuckled quietly. "Medical command," he muttered. "That's cute." The tall SEAL ignored him. He studied her again. Young, maybe mid-20s. Fresh scrubs. No signs of military service on her posture or speech. And yet she wasn't backing down. "You new here?" he asked. "Yes, sir." "At least you got the sir part right." A few of the watching nurses exchanged uneasy looks. Everyone could hear the tension sharpening. The SEAL leaned slightly on the counter. "Let me simplify this for you," he said calmly. His voice was controlled now. Cold. Professional. "My team just pulled a man out of a classified operation overseas." He gestured toward the ICU wing. "That man is in one of those rooms." A quiet beep echoed from a monitor deeper down the hall. "He's not just some patient," the SEAL continued. He's part of an active military investigation. The charge nurse shifted uncomfortably. The rookie didn't. Then you should talk to the hospital administrator, she replied. We already did. The answer came instantly. And now we're done asking permission. The words hung in the air. Behind the seal, the other operators spread slightly across the hallway. Not aggressively, but with the quiet awareness of men used to controlling space. The rookie nurse noticed. So did the security guard at the far end of the corridor. But nobody stepped forward. Because everyone understood something else too. When elite military units showed up, it usually meant something bigger than hospital policy was happening. The tall seal straightened. He wasn't shouting anymore. He didn't need to. Here's the situation, he said. We have federal authority tied to that room. He tapped the counter once more. You're standing between us and our teammate. The rookie nurse finally set her clipboard down. Slowly, carefully. Her voice stayed calm. And I'm standing between you and a patient who just survived emergency surgery. A doctor halfway down the hallway shifted again, suddenly paying closer attention. The seal noticed that too. His patience was thinning. You're protecting the wrong person, he said. No, she answered quietly. I'm protecting my patient. The hallway fell silent again. For the first time since they arrived, the tall seal's eyes narrowed with real curiosity. Most civilians folded under pressure like this. They apologized. They stepped aside. They called a supervisor. But this nurse wasn't doing any of those things. She looked nervous, yes. But she wasn't yielding. Behind him, one of the operators murmured quietly. Boss, something's off. The tall seal didn't answer. He kept his eyes on the nurse. You mentioned SAS earlier, he said slowly. Her expression didn't change. Yes. He crossed his arms. You got family in the British military. No. Friends. No. The seal tilted his head slightly. Then why bring it up? The rookie nurse held his gaze. For the first time, something shifted in the air. Something subtle. Something the experienced operators in the hallway noticed immediately. Confidence. Not arrogance. Not defiance. Just quiet certainty. The kind professionals carried when they knew something others didn't. When she finally spoke again, her voice was steady. Because, she said, the man in that room asked for me specifically. That caught them off guard. The second operator frowned. You? Yes. Why would a special operations patient request a rookie nurse? She didn't answer right away. The tall seal studied her again, more carefully this time. Something about this interaction was no longer adding up. Finally, he asked the question that had been building since the word SAS first appeared. What exactly did he say? The nurse picked up her clipboard again. Her fingers stopped trembling. And when she answered, her tone carried the quiet weight of a message that clearly wasn't meant for the entire hallway. He said, she replied calmly, tell them Falcon 9 is awake. The words hung in the air longer than anyone expected. Falcon 9 is awake, the nurse repeated. The corridor felt suddenly smaller. The seal's jaw tightened. His eyes narrowed, but not in anger. In calculation. He looked at his team. They looked back at him, silently sharing a moment that no one outside the military could have understood. The second operator, the one who had stiffened at the mention of SAS, shifted his weight from one boot to the other. Not a lot. Just enough to signal unease. No one spoke. The beep of a monitor somewhere deeper in the ICU suddenly seemed louder. A drip line gurgled. A wheeled cart squeaked when it shifted slightly. Every small sound echoed like a warning. The charge nurse at the station glanced at the rookie. Her brow furrowed in concern, but she said nothing. She had learned that the hard way, silence often carried more weight than words in these situations. Who is Falcon 9? One of the operators asked quietly. The nurse's eyes didn't waver. Patient identifier. Classified. The words didn't comfort them. They only deepened the unease. The tall seal ran a hand across his jaw, fingertips brushing over the rough stubble. He exhaled slowly. He didn't like being surprised, especially in places he controlled. Hospitals were supposed to be predictable. Clean. Ordered. People followed rules. But this wasn't predictable. His voice dropped, almost conversational. "You seem familiar with him." "I'm his nurse," she replied. "I've been assigned for post-operative care." He studied her again. Mid-20s. Young. Naive in ways most soldiers recognized immediately. But there was something about the way she held her spine, the quiet steadiness in her tone. It didn't match the rookie badge she wore. He didn't say anything more. Not yet. Behind him, the other operators exchanged looks. Small cues. A subtle raise of the eyebrow. A twitch in a jaw. These were silent signals that something wasn't right. The corridor remained frozen, everyone conscious of an invisible tension. A doctor came out of a side room, clipboard in hand, eyes darting between the SEAL and the nurse. "Is everything okay here?" he asked, voice careful. The nurse's reply was calm. "Everything is under control." The SEAL's eyes flicked to the doctor. He noted the small signs, the quick glance at the exits, the way the doctor's fingers tapped nervously on the clipboard. Fear. Or maybe respect. Or both. The tall SEAL's gaze returned to the rookie. He waited, watching her. Not aggressive, but assessing, reading, counting. The quiet unease grew. Small details accumulated. A cart left slightly crooked in the hallway, a nurse stepping too lightly, an orderly holding his breath as if afraid to disrupt the moment. Even the hum of the fluorescent lights above seemed to intensify. The ordinary buzz of electricity suddenly sounded like a countdown. The rookie nurse shifted slightly, adjusting her stance. Nothing dramatic. But it was enough to show she wasn't intimidated. Not really. The second operator whispered to his teammate, low enough that no one else could hear, "She knows something we don't." The first operator didn't respond. He simply continued watching, his silence adding weight to the moment. Minutes passed. Slowly. Each tick of the clock felt elongated. The tension wasn't just about authority anymore. It was about the unknown. The space between what was said and what remained hidden. The nurse's clipboard trembled slightly in her hands. Not from fear. From anticipation. Her eyes met the SEAL's again. Brief. Calculated. A small reaction from one of the other staff, a swallowed gulp, a sudden glance toward a vent, the subtle shifting of feet, hinted that they sensed it too. Something off. Something dangerous. The tall SEAL finally broke the silence. Not with a command. Not with a threat. With a question, slow, deliberate. What did he mean? Awake. The nurse didn't answer immediately. She scanned the hallway, briefly catching the eyes of the charge nurse, the doctor, and the second operator. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Silence. The SEAL noticed it. The pause. The tension coiling in her shoulders. It wasn't fear, it was awareness. Knowledge. Something deliberate. A slight clatter from a cart down the corridor made everyone jump. Even the seasoned operators flinched. The nurse's voice, when it finally came, was measured. Controlled. He's ready. The SEAL's eyes narrowed. His gut told him, something is very wrong here. The unease spread. Subtle, creeping. Like shadows lengthening in a room with no sun. No one spoke. The corridor seemed to shrink with every passing heartbeat. Even the fluorescent lights flickered for a moment, unnoticed by most, but registering in the peripheral awareness of those trained to catch anomalies. Every movement, every breath, every pause, small clues stacking, each one hinting at the truth lurking just out of sight. The operators exchanged another silent look. The rookie nurse remained perfectly still. Calm. Silent. Confident. And in that quiet, subtle tension, the audience could feel it. Something is off. Not yet revealed. But unmistakably there. The hallway seemed frozen, yet the air vibrated with anticipation. The tall SEAL finally stepped closer, slow, deliberate, testing the space between himself and the nurse. Every soldier learns to measure distance, to gauge threat before committing, but this nurse. She didn't flinch. She barely moved. "Falcon 9 specifically requested you," he said, voice low, controlled. "Explain that." Her eyes lifted. Calm. Measured. "I monitor. I observe. That's my role." He blinked. One fast, almost imperceptible movement. She caught it and didn't react, as if she had anticipated the microsecond delay. A subtle moment, but enough to make him pause. Behind him, his team shifted. The second operator's brow furrowed. He had seen this before, rookies freezing, sweating, apologizing. This wasn't that. Observe, the tall SEAL asked, skeptical. In a hospital. You think that makes sense? Yes, sir, she said evenly. It's standard procedure. Standard. Not for someone like Falcon 9. Not for someone in a room under federal and military scrutiny. The SEAL's instincts hummed. Something in her confidence, in her body language, didn't align with her supposed role. The monitor beeped a low, irregular pulse. The nurse glanced toward it for just a heartbeat, then back to him. Her eyes flicked, then fixed. Precise. Calculated. The SEAL's gut tightened. He had seen this before in combat. The quiet ones, underestimated, the ones who moved without announcing it but changed outcomes before anyone noticed. He shifted slightly, just enough to test the distance. She mirrored subtly, hands steady, stance unchanged. Not copying. Counterbalancing. A doctor approached the ICU doorway, voice trembling slightly. Everything okay here? The nurse didn't flinch. Her head tilted ever so slightly. The doctor stumbled in his words. I mean, patient stable. Yes, she said simply, and in that one sentence, her tone implied command, not request. Authority not earned by rank but by presence. The SEAL noticed a small pattern. Tiny, almost invisible movements. The nurse adjusted the 4 lines without touching them directly, barely shifted the bed with her presence. It was subtle, but he saw it. Another operator whispered, low, "Boss, there's something about her." He ignored the comment, focusing instead on microsignals. Eye shifts, posture, minimal adjustments of weight. Every one of them spoke volumes. She was aware. Hyper-aware. Then came the near miss. A tray with surgical instruments rattled as someone bumped the counter. The sound should have startled her. It didn't. Not a blink, not a flinch. Just a slight tightening of her grip on the clipboard. But the SEAL noticed how she subtly shifted her weight forward, instantly prepared for balance, movement, reaction. No ordinary nurse moved like that. The second operator exchanged a look with his partner. A fleeting acknowledgement of the same instinct forming in all 3 of them. This is no rookie. The SEAL cleared his throat, testing the waters. You're holding information, he said carefully. Something you're not telling me. The nurse tilted her head, just slightly, and the expression on her face didn't give anything away. I only relay what's necessary. Necessary. That word hung heavier than any threat. Another subtle cue. A doctor tried to step closer to whisper to the SEAL. The nurse moved just enough to intercept his path, not aggressively, just a soft shift of presence. He froze mid-step. Every movement was deliberate, controlled, precise. The SEAL's heartbeat accelerated slightly. He'd trained for ambushes, surprises, and hidden threats. Yet this calm, calculated awareness from someone apparently inexperienced was unsettling. Another small moment. The nurse glanced at a camera in the corner, then shifted her stance in a way that shielded it from the operator's line of sight. No one else noticed. She hadn't acknowledged it, hadn't spoken, but the SEAL did. And it set off the quiet alarm in his mind, anticipation beyond her role. The second operator whispered again, almost inaudible. She's reading us. She's seeing everything before we act. The SEAL's eyes narrowed. He had underestimated civilians before. Thought they were predictable. Thought they were helpless. Not this one. The tension thickened. Nothing moved, yet the energy in the corridor shifted. The nurse's quiet confidence and measured actions were forcing the soldiers to reconsider. One more near miss. A tray slid off the counter by accident. Most people would jump. She didn't. Instead, she angled herself slightly, tilting her shoulder and hand in just the right moment so the tray bumped her elbow without making a sound. A small, imperceptible act. But for the SEAL, it was a signal. A warning. She was deliberate. She was precise. She was aware. The operators exchanged another look. The SEAL finally spoke, his voice low and controlled, but carrying a subtle edge of curiosity mixed with caution. "You're not ordinary." The nurse's eyes met his. Unfazed. Calm. Confident. "No," she said softly. "Not ordinary. Just necessary." And in that statement, the audience begins to sense the shift. The character everyone assumed was inexperienced, underestimated, even fragile, might actually be far more capable than anyone realized. Every micro-movement, every careful glance, every pause in her speech layered a growing tension. The seed of doubt had been planted. The audience begins to ask, who is she really? What does she know? How far does her awareness extend? The corridor remained silent. Yet the unease had doubled. The underestimated rookie was no longer predictable. And the SEALs, elite, trained, disciplined, were beginning to feel the first threads of uncertainty. Nothing had been revealed. But everything was starting to unravel. The corridor held its breath. The nurse lifted her clipboard slowly, as if choosing the exact moment to act. "Step aside," she said, voice calm but this time, not a request. A command. The tall SEAL blinked, then froze. Behind him, the other operators stiffened. Something was different. Something fundamental. The nurse tapped her badge. It wasn't a hospital ID. Not just N. Carter. It gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights. Lieutenant U.S. Navy Special Operations, SEAL designation attached. The hallway seemed to tilt for a heartbeat. "Lieutenant Carter," the tall SEAL finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're a SEAL." "Yes," she replied. No hesitation. No apology. Just authority. The operators shifted instantly. Posture, tone, eyes, they all recalibrated in a fraction of a second. Every microsignal changed. Subtle steps became cautious. Aggression vanished. The second operator's jaw went slack. He glanced at the team leader. Silent confirmation. We underestimated her. The SEAL in front of her swallowed. His shoulders slumped slightly, not in defeat but in recognition. "You outrank me," he said finally. "Yes," she said, steady. "And I'm in charge of this patient." The words hit the hallway like gunfire. The nurse didn't raise her voice. She didn't gesture. She just stood, composed, exuding calm authority. Orderlies stopped mid-step. Doctors froze. Even the hum of the monitors seemed to pause, waiting for the next move. The SEAL leader blinked, then exhaled. Slowly. Respect edged into his posture. Every rigid muscle softened. "I understand," he said, voice low, almost reverent. "We'll follow your lead." The second operator exhaled sharply. "Yes, ma'am," he said, the words automatic but sincere. The rookie nurse was no longer underestimated. The power had shifted entirely. A small sound, a wheel squeaking, echoed down the corridor. She didn't flinch. She didn't move unnecessarily. She simply nodded toward the ICU wing. The tall SEAL followed her gaze, then stepped back, letting her pass. Her presence alone had rewritten the rules. The operators who had entered with authority now deferred silently to her. Every line of tension in the hallway dissolved, replaced by quiet compliance. Even the charge nurse, who had been tense since the moment the SEALs arrived, relaxed visibly. She glanced at Lieutenant Carter, then muttered under her breath, almost to herself, "I should have known." The SEAL leader exhaled again, this time with a hint of a smile, almost hidden. Not amusement, but acknowledgement. He straightened his posture, ready to act under her orders. One of the junior operators whispered, incredulous, She didn't even have to raise her voice." "No," the SEAL replied. "She didn't have to. Authority like that. You feel it before you see it." Lieutenant Carter tapped her badge again briefly, signaling not arrogance, but legitimacy. She moved toward the ICU wing with purposeful steps, and the operators fell in behind her. Every movement, every subtle shift, every pause in speech, nothing had changed about her demeanor. Yet everything about the environment had shifted. The audience could see it clearly. The underestimated rookie wasn't just experienced. She wasn't just capable. She was in command, and the moment the truth became visible, the power dynamic snapped completely. The corridor, once frozen with tension, now carried a different energy. A muted respect settled over everyone present. The operators no longer led, they followed. The transformation was immediate. The SEAL leader's eyes met hers briefly. No words. Just acknowledgement. Everything had changed in a heartbeat. The quiet authority, the hidden rank, the controlled presence, it had flipped the world around her. And in that single, unforgettable moment, the audience realized underestimation was never an option with her. The hallway felt empty once the ICU doors closed behind Lieutenant Carter and the SEAL team. The operators lingered for a moment, adjusting their gear, avoiding each other's eyes. No one spoke. Their earlier confidence had evaporated, replaced by a quiet awareness. They had misjudged someone they thought was inexperienced. The tall SEAL ran a hand across his jaw, exhaling slowly. His mind replayed every micro-movement, every measured pause, every subtle command from Carter. Each one had carried authority he hadn't expected. The second operator finally spoke, voice low. She didn't have to shout. Didn't even raise her voice. Exactly, the SEAL replied. And we almost walked over her. Almost. The weight of that realization sank in. They had entered expecting compliance, expecting deference. Instead, they had been corrected professionally, efficiently, without theatrics. Down the corridor, the charge nurse wiped her hands on a towel, still unsettled but relieved. She glanced toward the ICU wing, where calm now reigned. She understood, perhaps better than anyone else, that authority wasn't always about seniority. It could be about presence, skill, and respect earned quietly. Lieutenant Carter emerged minutes later, clipboard in hand, expression calm but precise. The SEALs fell into step behind her automatically. Patient stable? The tall operator asked, more as confirmation than authority. Yes, Carter replied, voice measured. Continue monitoring protocols. I'll handle the updates to command. The operators nodded. Not just compliance, they understood that her role was legitimate, necessary. They had no desire to argue. The aftermath wasn't dramatic. There were no explosive confrontations or angry rebukes. There were only small, human reactions, lingering glances, subtle nods of respect, brief internal reckonings. The rookie nurse, who had once appeared uncertain, now carried herself differently. Not arrogantly. Not boastfully. Just aware. The hospital staff recognized it immediately. Even casual observers noticed the shift in the air. This was a professional who commanded respect naturally, without forcing it. Back in the break room, the operators gathered quietly. They reviewed the events in their minds. Every detail mattered, every subtle hesitation, every controlled pause, every precise action. They were soldiers trained to notice these things, and yet Carter had outpaced their assumptions. Lesson learned, the second operator murmured. Never underestimate someone you can't read. The tall SEAL simply nodded. He felt it not just as a professional acknowledgement, but as a quiet personal reminder. Authority can take many forms, and respect is earned in unexpected ways. For Carter, the consequences were less visible but equally real. Her credibility had solidified, her presence reinforced. She had demonstrated that competence and command could be quiet, deliberate, and effective. And while she had exercised authority over experienced operators, she had done so without arrogance or theatrics. That professionalism left a mark not only on the SEALs, but on everyone who witnessed it. Outside the ICU, the world continued. Monitors beeped. Drips gurgled. The rhythm of the hospital carried on. But the subtle shift remained. Those who had witnessed the confrontation carried a new awareness. Underestimation could be dangerous, and true authority often arrived silently. No one celebrated. No one sought revenge. There were only the quiet consequences of misjudgment and the reinforced respect earned through competence and composure. Lieutenant Carter walked back to her station, calm and collected, as the corridor slowly returned to normal. The operators followed, not as aggressors, but as collaborators, aware now of a hierarchy they hadn't expected, but respected fully. In the aftermath, the lesson was clear. Power wasn't about size, volume, or aggression. It was about skill, judgment, and unwavering presence. And everyone who had been present understood it, silently and indelibly. The corridor had emptied, but the echo of that confrontation lingered not in sound, but in awareness. Respect, the SEALs realized, was never guaranteed. It was earned quietly, deliberately, sometimes in moments when no one expected it. Authority wasn't always the loudest voice or the tallest figure. It could reside in calm presence, in measured action, in a single glance that shifted the balance of a room. For the hospital staff, the lesson was subtle but unmistakable. They had watched a professional step forward with no need for theatrics, and they had felt the weight of competence carry more power than fear or intimidation ever could. Even for the seasoned operators, it was humbling. The quiet moments, the adjustments in posture, the subtle commands, the patience, had spoken volumes. They left a lasting impression far beyond the corridor. Lieutenant Carter moved through her day as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. No one applauded. No one whispered her name. She did not seek recognition. That was her authority, unassuming, effective, complete. In that stillness, the audience understands. True power doesn't need to announce itself. It can be understated, invisible even, yet undeniable. It demands respect without demanding acknowledgement. The SEALs had arrived confident in their dominance, only to leave changed, aware that misjudgment carries consequences, and that humility in the face of true skill is not weakness, but understanding. The lesson lingered quietly, like the fading hum of fluorescent lights in an empty hallway. And for anyone who observed, or will observe, the imprint of such authority, one truth remains clear: respect is earned in silence, not shouted in noise.